Good morning. It's a privilege to be with you this morning. Thank you, Pastor Carol, for the invitation. Today, December 10, is the second Sunday of Advent. This is the time when we, according to our Christian calendar, anticipate the birth or the coming of the baby Jesus, the Christ child. During this time, we are encouraged to reflect on the significance of the coming birth of the God sent. Today also marks the 75th anniversary of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. On December 10, 1948, the United Nations General Assembly, which was held in France, adopted the historic declaration that calls us to affirm human dignity and uphold the human rights of all. How shall we make sense of these events in the light of what is going on around us? What does our anticipation, preparation, and waiting of the birth of Jesus have to do with our day-to-day lives and with the challenges that our world is facing today? Who are we waiting for? Who is coming? If we ask our popular culture who is coming this Advent and Christmas season, the most popular answer is Santa Claus. Santa Claus is coming to town. This is the Advent, the coming that our consumeristic culture is eagerly waiting for. The first thing that comes to mind when we think of Santa's coming are material gifts. What will I get from Santa this Christmas season? What is your wish list? We not only live in a market economy, we live in a market society in which market-based values define the atmosphere in which we live and move and have our being. What is involved here is not only financial transactions, but also about who we are and what matters to us, which is a matter of morality and religion. The global market has assumed the role of religion, which has become a form of idolatry. Economism is the name of this religion, and its god is endless economic growth. The economists are the priests, the advertisers are the evangelists, the consumers are the lay people. The shopping mall is the cathedral. Virtue is competitive spirit, and sin is inefficiency. Shop till you drop is the only way to salvation. And if Jesus saves, we want to know where he shops. The church, unfortunately, has not escaped the stranglehold of market religion. Our formation as consumers has distorted our faith. Evangelism has been confused with marketing, worship with entertainment, stewardship with fundraising, and pastoral ministry with vending services. And the pastor's job is that of a vendor of services. Here is a fascinating quote from Richard Halverson, former chaplain of the United States Senate. And I quote, "In the beginning, the church was a fellowship of men and women centered on the living Christ. Then the church moved to Greece, where it became a philosophy. Then it moved to Rome, where it became an institution. Next, it moved to Europe, where it became a culture. And finally, it moved to America, where it became an enterprise." End of quote. Something is not right, and it's not all right. Using William Stafford's lines, like elephants, we parade holding each other's tail. But if one wanders, our circus won't find the park. That is why it is important that awake people be awake, or a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals that we give, yes or no or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep. Are our signals clear? Yes, no, maybe. The darkness around us is deep. We need to reorient Advent to its true purpose, which involves a careful reading of the signs of the times, waiting in anticipation of the birth of the Christ child, which is God's way of showing us how to live life, and experiencing a sense of wonder at God's miraculous decision of becoming human and dwelling among us. What is it like to wait in anticipation of the birth of the Christ child, the promised path to our deliverance and salvation? As an expectant or anticipative waiting, Advent is not an idle waiting, but a watchful or attentive, discerning, active, hopeful, and transformative waiting. Advent waiting calls us to be careful, to a careful and reflective reading of the Advent narrative and its context in relation to our context and the challenges we are facing in such a time as ours, with the eyes of hope. Are we engaged in watchful, attentive, and hopeful waiting, a waiting that is characterized by wonder and amazement? We love to see images of starry night in which shepherds watch their flocks, but often forget the plight of the flock and the shepherds in the Advent narrative and the plight of many of our times. We love to see the nativity scene, but often oblivious of the plight of the pregnant Mary and women in similar situations. We love to listen and sing Advent and Christmas carols, but often fail to hear the wailings of mothers and fathers who have lost children because of the most recent conflicts in Israel and Palestine. We love to sing Silent Night, Holy Night, all is calm, all is bright, but fail to connect it with the sounds of sirens and bombs and buildings crumbling and the groaning of those buried under the rubble. What is going on here? Don't we see the disconnect? Are we not missing the point? We normally take for granted that pregnant women will have safe delivery, but this is not true in many countries. Childbirth is a cause of death for the mother and the child. In a society like the United States that has the highest medical healthcare cost, but ranks 31st out of 178 countries in maternal death, and even worse for African Americans, that is extremely disturbing. This is not just disturbing, but scandalous, and it has gotten even worse in the last 2 decades. There is enough reason for cynicism and despair in our times, but Advent calls us to watch and wait with the heart of hope, because only those who hope can truly see the precariousness of our situation, as well as see the light amidst the darkness. This waiting in hope does not kill time, but redeems the time being from being just another or ordinary time. For those who wait in hope, this time being is our time, a precious, momentous time, a time to stay awake and be alert in protecting what we hold dear: dignity, freedom, public goods, and shared flourishing. Advent waiting is not only active and hopeful waiting, but also waiting in wonderment or amazement. It is a waiting with a sense of wonder at God's miraculous and humbling plan of becoming human like us, because that's the only and the best way to guide us, not the literal or physical star. Do we know how to find and follow the star that can guide us to Mary, who is about to give birth to the Christ child, like the ancient shepherds of Bethlehem? Maybe we have confused the glitter of wealth and security with God's star that can guide us to our true north. Advent admonishes us to watch, to wait, to wonder, but there is more to this. We are called to rise, look for the Christ child, follow his footsteps and his teachings, and rise up. We are called to follow the Christ child, who is the great shepherd of the sheep, who also calls us to gentle and prophetic shepherding. There are basically two paths that the shepherd leads. First, beside still waters and green pastures, and second, into the paths of righteousness. This is not the bottled still water in contrast to the carbonated water that Germans ask us to specify if we simply say water. What is referred to here is the calm and refreshing stream. Dogs drink from turbulent and noisy waters. I was informed that sheep don't drink from these waters. They fear turbulent and roaring waters. Good shepherd leads the sheep to green pastures, places that provide nourishing provision, places of comfort and safety, and places of shared flourishing. This is the same shepherd who taught us to pray for our daily bread. But it is the same shepherd who also said, "You shall not live by bread alone." This does not negate the importance of food and material goods for our sustenance, for we know that we cannot live without them. But to see our need for daily bread in relation to a higher value, the bread of life. Besides turning into a host wherever he dined, Jesus, the great shepherd, also changed the menu. Beyond offering the good food, those around the table received the gift of God's presence and the miraculous food of faith, the bread of life. But why is it that many are hungry when there's plenty? Production has increased. The gross domestic product of many countries have increased. This is certainly true in the United States of America. The main issue, however, is not production, but distribution. Metaphorically speaking, contrary to the expectation that a rising tide raises all boats, the reality has been that a rising tide raises all yachts. Worse, the poor don't even have boats, and they are drowning in the tsunami of corporate profits. This is an issue of social justice, which is systemic in character. At the heart here is moral and theological. It is about concupiscence and greed. The world has enough for everyone's needs, but not for the insatiable greed of the few. Greed is an expression of idolatry, which is giving mundane goods the status of eternal securers. So let's make this Advent season a time to wake up from our moral slumber, to rise and look for the pregnant Mary. Wait with alertness until Christ is given birth, and rise up and follow him, helping to dismantle systems that are inhospitable, pursue the reign of righteousness, which is the only way for the green pastures to be enjoyed by all. And while charity is welcome, it's not enough. Charity, says Bill Myers, provides crumbs from our tables. Social justice offers a place at the table. As someone said or posted on Facebook, when you have more than you need, build a longer table, not a higher fence. Yes, the Advent narrative is about waiting for the birth of the Christ child. But we are no longer in the ancient Bethlehem. For the Advent narrative to become real for us today, let's patiently tend the birth of the Christ child in our lives. This we must do if we are to be empowered social agents. What are we waiting for this Advent season is the birth and the arrival of our empowered selves that are capable of social change. As someone said, we are the ones we have been waiting for. Let's be the change that we seek. No doubt the darkness around us is deep, but with an active hope in God's faithfulness and in the power of the Holy Spirit, we can reclaim and transform the darkness. For such a time as ours, it's also God's opportune time, the time of salvation. Yes, the darkness is deep, but what if the darkness is not the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb? What if our labors of love is bearing fruit, and now we are experiencing contractions? What if something is waiting to be born and our art of social midwifery is needed? What does a midwife tell a pregnant woman who is in the delivery process? Breathe and push. Now please repeat after me. Breathe, push. Breathe, push. Now breathe and push until the water breaks. Breathe and push until you hear the burning cry of a new and better tomorrow for our land and for our world. Let our social midwifery answer, it's coming. Thank you.